We've got our Ravin all put together. So now let's jump into video number 2. How to operate this crazy looking thing. Let's jump right in. Hey everybody, welcome back to Trinity Wild. And before we get started on operation, I want to go through again from nose to tail, everything on this crossbow, so I know what things are named. So when I refer to certain things, you'll know what I'm talking about.
So here we go front to back. Nose, rest, riser, limbs, cam, axle, strings, bridge, quiver bracket is underneath. That's your crank handle and your quiver. And remember, the quiver and the crank handle can be swapped either side. Rail. This is where you'll find your serial number. It's not an actual rail in the sense of an old crossbow because the bolt doesn't touch. The bolt will go inside of this hole and float and touch nothing but the rest on this end. You can buy an upgraded rest, which we'll talk about in the maintenance and troubleshooting section, but that's the rest it comes with. Scope covers. The little caps are called turrets. This over here is on the left side is your illumination. So you have green or red that you can do. You just take that, and again, we'll go through this in the troubleshooting part in case yours is not working. Speed dial. This crossbow, if you remember, shoots 420. So we're gonna put it just below that 425 mark. And then we'll go from there, and we'll go through how to adjust that during the sighting in phase. And take the cap off. This way, if it's a little blurry for you, you can adjust. Now that's not giving you necessarily magnification, but that's just gonna give you some eye relief. Put it on fire and safe. Cocking and decocking, and your stock, where you can also put your crank handle here. And that's just an overview of the whole thing. So when I'm naming one of these things, you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
A lot of this stuff so far has probably been very rudimentary. If you're an old school crossbow guy, this is going to be a lot different than a regular crossbow. Let me show you why. With these newer crossbows, this one's a little over 10 inches axle to axle, 6 inches when it's cocked. The operation of cocking it is a little different. An old style crossbow that had a much wider axle to axle range, you had 2 hooks and they still make those, and I've got videos on how to operate those as well. 2 hooks that operated, and you pulled them back. Because of how narrow this crossbow is and the length of the power stroke, when that string comes back and it's in a cocked position, the angle of the string is so tight that there's no way you can get hooks out or a sled out or anything, or certainly your hands. I've had people ask me, well, could I cock it with my hands? No, there's no way. But even if you could get it back with your hands, there's no way you could get your fingers out because of how steep the angle is on that string, and you'll see that in just a second. So what happens with this model and some of the other designs, the entire trigger box here is going to go down and click onto the string, and then we're going to reel it back. It's tethered. This is an internal crank system, and you'll see the tether. So it's attached to the trigger box, which will come down, lock on the string, and we're going to reel it back in with the crank handle. So how do we release the trigger box down to the string? I do want to go through a couple of differences with the R10X, R5X, as opposed to the R29 and the R26. There are a couple of little differences. On the R10X, your dump button is right here. On the R29 and the R26, it's going to be right in the back of the stock. So it's just set up just a little bit different, and it's because this one is so much shorter than the 10X and the 5X. Now they do operate slightly differently, but they do the exact same thing. With this button, when there is tension on the string, so we're going to assume I've hunted with this before, so there's tension on this string. If you haven't, or you've never cocked it before, you can just push this button down and it will release. 29X, 26X, the R10 will not do that. The 5X and the 10X will do that. After you've cocked it and shot it, you can just push the button down and it will actually release and let it drop. Whereas with the other ones, you have to take the tension off. So I'm gonna show you how to operate that as if it won't go down. So tension on the string, tension here, I can't, or it's just too hard to push down. We're gonna assume it's just too hard for me to push down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my crank handle and take the tension off. Now, before I go any farther, as I'm operating this on my leg, do not do that. I'm gonna show you a different way to do it. When you watch me do this, don't put into comments, that dummy's cranking it sitting on his leg. That's so stupid. Yes, it is stupid. I'm showing you how to do it. I would never, ever do this and never want you to do it that way. I want you to be able to see. So, that disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. Crank handle. I'm gonna put it on the notch. I'm gonna put some tension on the button. I'm gonna go ahead and start pushing that down. I can't get it to push down, but as I begin to crank in a clockwise motion, that's tightening, reeling it back in, as I do that, that button will drop right away. I'm gonna back it out one turn, take my finger off, take the handle off, and now it will freely, I can push the button and it'll drop. When I take my finger off the button, it stops. As that trigger box is dropping, that's spinning. That's important to know. So we're lowering it down. So there's a little button right here on the side. That just gives me a little handle to push down. Notice my finger's still holding down on the button, and I'm going to push down. You're gonna hear it click onto the string. Listen close. It's attached to the string. Now we're ready to cock it. I locate my crank handle, put that here, and crank it back. How hard is it to crank? When these things first came out, I had my granddaughter who was 6 at the time. I said, baby, let's see if you can crank this. She put it on the ground, cranked it right back, no problem at all. In fact, when she was done, she said, Monkey, that was 11 turns. So now I know. What I'm doing, don't do. I'm turning it just so you can see it. What you need to do is plant it on the ground. I'll show you in a second. Plant it on the ground, wrap your feet around it so it can't get away from you, and then cock it back. So I'm gonna crank, and again, watch, see the tether here, that's gonna bring the trigger box all the way back to the back. Now, I feel the tension get heavier. One of the great things about this design is I can't over crank it. If I continue to crank it, nothing bad happens. The gear in here kind of slips in the handle, so I can't overdo it. I'm not gonna accidentally blow up my crossbow by over cranking it. Take the handle out, and we are cocked and ready to go. Now from here, I'm ready to load our bolt. Now, I've got some bolt safety tips and things like that are gonna be on the video number 4, troubleshooting and things you need to watch on the bolt. Today, let's just go through how to operate it. So as you load your bolt, you'll notice there's 2 orange and 1 white feather. You must use Ravin bolts, by the way. So it's gonna all look like that. Now this knock is a capture knock. And again, if you go back and look at some of the other crossbows, most of the bolts sit against the string. This actually clicks onto the string, which is important to remember. So I'm gonna load it with the odd feather down. The white feather is down. I'm gonna go underneath the bridge. I'm gonna drop it down, and it's gonna go right in the hole. So see how it goes into that hole, aligned with the string, and the bolt floats above the rail. I want to pause here because this is the part that I get more phone calls, more people coming back in and saying, hey, my crossbow won't work because of this right here. As I load my bolt down into that hole, I've got to put some pressure on that thing to load it because it is going to capture the string. Listen closely. I've got to make sure that this bolt clicks onto the string. Now, quickly too, there is a safe zone here and there's a danger zone. If you look right across where the axle is, right across the axles, from here up, inside of here, believe it or not, that's your safe zone. Right here is not safe. Down here is not safe. If you keep your hand inside of that little safety zone there, you're gonna be fine. So let's try again. Bolt underneath the bridge, odd feather down, slides into the hole. So as I slide it in there, as I push down, I want to get a good hold of it. Now this needs to be on the ground. I've got it on my leg. You are going to have it on the ground. If I've got it like this, a lot of times I can't get enough pressure to put it down. That's what I've noticed people having trouble with. This is on my leg. You should have it on the ground, and push down, and you'll hear it click. If it does not click, the safety's not going to come off and this is not going to fire. Again, I have more phone calls, more people coming back in that say, my crossbow won't fire. That's the problem. So at this point, you're ready to fire your crossbow. Put it on fire and let her fly. I'm going to encourage you, shoot it. Have a decocking bag, not necessarily a decocking bolt because you're going to ruin those. You need to have what's called a discharge bag, just a small bag. Throw a bag in the back of your truck, keep one near your shooting house so you can reach out there and just shoot this into a target and decock it as opposed to uncocking it. But it says cock and uncock. Yes, I know. So pay close attention here. This is where people can get hurt. Doesn't happen often, but it can happen. Reach out, take the bolt out. Take the bolt out. Do not decock this with the bolt in there. Again, I'm telling you this because I've had people do it. I even saw on a recent post someone saying that's how you should do it. It is not how you should do it, I assure you. If you've done it that way and haven't been hurt and haven't messed up your crossbow, fine. We're gonna deal with some of this stuff in video number 4, where we're gonna do some troubleshooting and some maintenance. If all this is rudimentary to you, just go there and maybe you'll find your answer to the problem you're having. But right now we're doing the ABCs of getting this thing ready to shoot. Mostly for people that are brand new to this, maybe haven't had a Ravin before. That's why we're really going slow and trying to be very thorough. So this is how it works. Grab your crank handle. Like we explained before, there is tension now on the trigger box. With tension, this button is not going to drop. I don't care how hard you push this button, it's not going to drop. That's good, because if it were to drop right now, we're going to have a problem. So again, I call it the dump button. In order to make the dump button drop, I've got to take the tension off now. I think I did that the wrong way. This way, yeah, you got to go this way. First, place it on the handle. Push button down, push the dump button, and I'm going to begin to put tension. Notice it drops. I don't have a good grip on the handle. Take your finger off that button and you can release. If you release this handle and your finger is on that button, that's going to be a problem. Because all that tension, that free spin that I showed you a second ago, you're doing it now with the handle on, and that handle is spinning crazy. And it's going to drop all the way down. So it's basically you've dry fired your crossbow, and when this spins around, it's going to come back and probably hit your hand and definitely break your crossbow. So that's why you've got to get a good grip on that handle and get this in a position. I'm going to show you in a second. Get this in a position to where you've got control of it. But again, push the button down, begin to crank. Again, I'm cranking in a clockwise motion. The button is dropped. Everything is in my hand now. I'm going to begin to lower. And again, if I keep saying that again, I'm saying it again and again and again and again, I understand. As I begin to lower, my hand doesn't feel comfortable. Take my finger off, and I'm good. Restart now. Push my finger down on the button, turn the handle clockwise, the button goes down, I begin to lower. Lower, and you can see it hopping. I mean, there's so much tension right here. Lower, 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 and all the way down. And we have successfully decocked the crossbow. As you see though, the trigger box is still on the string. That is perfectly fine, not going to hurt a thing, but we are going to deal with that in the maintenance and troubleshooting video coming up later. That was my morning hunt. I'm going to put this away and get ready for the evening hunt. This is more than fine. This can stay on there. Don't leave it cocked. Either shoot it into a bag or decock it. Let's roll through this one more time, but I want to put this in a position that I want you to have it in as you operate the crossbow. So as we have the crossbow on the ground, we're locked onto the string, we're ready to cock. Place the handle there. Wrap your feet around that nose so it can't get away from you. And I'm holding that. As I'm cranking it, as I'm cocking the crossbow, that's not really the danger. One thing you do need to watch, based on where you have your scope, if you've got your scope mounted a little further back, as that handle comes around, it can hit that turret. So you may want to pull that out as you do that, just to keep it from nicking that turret as it comes around. That's no problem. So again, and right there, I feel the tension increase. I'm going to put another half turn on it just to make sure it's fully cocked. And we're ready to go and load. Now to decock. Wrap it around. This way, I've got my hand on this handle and I can get my thumb on that button. This is what that handle is for. So I can wrap my hand around there, get my thumb on that button, and I've got good control where I'm at. Place your handle on, begin to put pressure on that button, and I'm going to take up the slack, and you hear it click. I didn't have to move that hardly at all. So we're tension, push down, that's all it took, not even a quarter turn. Now I can begin to back it down. I feel very confident. I've got super good control. I've got my feet wrapped around this thing so it can't do this wiggle waggle thing right there, and bring it down. Again, watch your turret. You may want to pull it out. If you have any questions what's going on here, it's getting away from you, get your finger off that button, and now I can let it go. If I do that, I've got to start all over again. Take up the slack, finger on the button, and it releases. And down we go. A little slack in the tether, and we're done. Well, that's it for video number 2, cocking and decocking. So in video number 3, we're going to learn how to sight in our scope. We're going to do a regular scope. We're also going to do a sniper scope. So come back for number 3. We'll get this sighted in and get you guys in the woods. Normally, I'd say turn everything off and go outside and get wild. But actually, just grab your phone, grab your computer. Let's go outside and get this thing sighted in. Maybe it'll be wild. I don't know. Hey, take care, you guys. God bless.